Howdy, y'all, and welcome to Liberty Libations number 68. My name is Jake Green, joined as usual by Zach Varnell and Zane Placie, and our special guest for the day is Evan Jaqua. How you doing today, Evan?
I'm doing just great. It's an honor to be on your show. I've been looking forward to this since we first made contact, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting discussion.
Heck yeah. Can you give the folks out there a brief description of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, I've had kind of an interesting life. I've lived around the world, different places. I actually got my master's degree in computer science in Japan and doing all my studies in Japanese. I've been spending most of the last 20 years in Peru and South America. I've also lived in China. And my original specialty was, engineering, especially in the computer science area, but I've moved to international business. And it's just been very interesting because it's given me a lot of different perspectives of different societies, different forms of government. Mm-hmm. And based on these different sources of inspiration, I started formulating the ideas for what I'm calling the Solutions Party. It's not actually an official party yet. Maybe someday it will be, but it's actually what I call the anti-political party, political party. And it's just proposing some basic ideas to address some of the multiple problems that this country seems to be having, but to do so in a way that's civil and hopefully interesting, and a way that, and also fun. So that's sort of the very, very basic idea behind it.
Heck yeah. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit here in a little while. But that's fantastic. We're the three of us are libertarians, so we have all sorts of novel ideas on how to fix the system.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's what we need. It's exactly what we need. And I don't want to interrupt your show or anything, but I'll just say this: I did live in communist China. I have many friends from China, and one of the things that they said that they love about living in America is the freedom of thought, because they didn't have that growing up, and that's one of our greatest gifts. And I think we need to respect the different points of view and think of that, our diversity of our thoughts, the diversity of our ideas as our greatest strength.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. I definitely feel like that has kind of gone by the wayside with the dominance of the two parties that are currently in control of everything. There aren't many diverse ideas being thrown around to actually fix problems here in the US. It's just seems to always be just throw more money at it and everything will be fine. But it obviously never is. All right, y'all, before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by Rabbit Eye Wine. If you live in the state of Georgia, they sell at, I don't know how many spots. I know it's on their locations map. I mean, that many spots. If you can count all
did not count
it. So many places you can buy Rabbit Eye Wine. You can also order it online and have it delivered to you in, I believe, 35 states. Oh, it's 135 locations in Georgia. So go on over to rabbiteyewine.com to order some, or visit your local package store. Anybody else know that those were called package stores, liquor stores? Like, was that a thing for y'all? Because my wife had no idea it was called a package store.
Package store. I've never even heard of that, but
yeah,
I think it's
the idea across. That's all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's a Southern thing. I think because I grew up knowing that a liquor store was a package store. I'd never heard anybody call it a liquor store. It was only ever a package store, which is really
cool. I wonder if the origin of that is like a euphemism where people didn't want to admit they were going to a liquor store. So, no, honey, it's okay. I'm just going to pick up a package.
That could be.
During Prohibition, we got packages to deliver. Maybe that was
there we go.
That came from.
Mm-hmm. I forgot to
Growing up, I lived down the road from a place that called themselves a package store, and they didn't sell a drop of alcohol. Like, we would go there and buy like produce that a guy grew in his farm and stuff, but I have no idea why he chose to call it that. Probably got a lot of disappointed visitors.
Probably. I forgot to ask, Zach, what are you drinking tonight?
I have a White Claw.
Nice. Zane,
Ooh.
moving on. Zane.
So I made some bourbon ice cream in my ice cream machine, and then put even more bourbon in that to make a bourbon ice cream milkshake.
Oh my God, that is ridiculous. Evan, are you drinking tonight?
I'm sorry. Well, actually, I had a lunch not too long ago, and had a couple of beers, and I tend to put a 2-drink limit on my day. So,
Fair
and
enough.
I didn't want to be, I didn't want to come into this, obviously tipsy. So
That's fair. That's completely fair. I've got my usual old fashioned going.
Zane's not even drinking though. He bypasses that 2-drink limit. He's eating ice cream.
There is a pretty hefty amount of bourbon in here, I must say.
I don't think you can boo me and then go talk about your milkshake.
I think that eating your alcohol is a very unique way of getting drunk, Zane. So kudos to you.
I'm an innovator.
You are an innovator. That is for sure. All right, let's get to our first topic of the night. Let's go. Zach, do you have the articles pulled up?
I accidentally unshared everything. Give me a second.
Yeah, I saw that. I've got all right. First story of the night before we get to anything else. Yesterday was Ross Ulbricht's birthday. He is 40 years old now. He's been jailed since he was 29. He's serving a 2 times life sentence for creating a website where people could freely transact. That was his only crime. He was not convicted of anything else, and they gave him a double life sentence for it. And Libertarian Party and many, many people here in the States have been pushing very hard to get him released, get him pardoned by the president. It has not happened yet, obviously, but we still maintain hope that it will eventually be granted. So, yeah. I don't know. Anybody else got anything to say about Ross?
I mean, I have to say that it's one of the biggest disappointments of the Trump presidency that he wasn't pardoned. And obviously not because it's the hugest thing that could have happened in terms of policy. Yeah. But he had his entire lame duck period where, for as much as he constantly wants to troll the left, he could have trolled the heck out of the left by pardoning Ross Ulbricht and Julian Assange and all these other guys. And yet he was either too stupid or just too up his own butt to do anything that could have accomplished anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. Evan, are you familiar with Ross Ulbricht?
No, actually I'm not. I just superficially, when I hear about it, now, of course, I feel got to be careful about talking about anything that I don't really know the details about, but this does sound exactly what happens in countries like China or Russia. Mm-hmm. If you cross a line that sounds pretty innocuous.
Yeah,
but, I'm very surprised to hear about that, and I'm interested to know more about it.
Yeah, it's a very long story, but basically he developed this website called the Silk Road, where it was just a free transaction website. Like people were transacting a lot in Bitcoin, and but there was obviously a lot of illicit things happening on it too, because he wasn't what's the right word? Yeah, he wasn't monitoring anything. It was just a platform. It was like how social media was supposed to be at the beginning. Just you build the basic structure and the people populate it and do whatever they want on it. And so that's what he did. And since there were like drugs and all sorts of illicit things happening on the website, like through the website, he got convicted for owning the website, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. And I do think he did moderate a little bit. I think child abuse was outlawed. Like you couldn't sell child abuse material, and maybe guns. I don't remember if guns were or not, but there were a few things that were even off limits there. Just they didn't put drugs off limit, and that was what the government was really mad about.
Yeah.
In terms of it being a platform, it would have been the equivalent of if in 1950 the executive of a phone company got arrested because people were planning crimes by calling each other over the phone. That's essentially what this was. He had a website where he wasn't really keeping tabs on everybody. Some people were up to no good, and then he took the fall for it. And the way that they caught him was like really nasty, like and full of trickery. Like he was on his laptop in like some kind of public library, and then two agents, I forget exactly what agency they were working for. I think it was the NSA or the FBI, or so two federal agents were essentially pretended to be a married couple having an argument, a really loud, distracting argument, and then he looked away from his laptop for like a second, and then another agent came by and grabbed the laptop so that he wouldn't have time to lock it before they could grab it, and then they got all this evidence off it.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
wild.
the way they arrested him. He did get caught earlier because he had done something stupid, like posting on a forum with like oddly specific details that led them to the Silk Road and connected it to that username. But yeah, that's how they arrested him, I guess, so they could preserve the evidence. So, because if you close that laptop lid, you might never be getting in.
Yeah. It's an interesting case. It's very sad. He spent 11, 12 years in jail now, and there's really no sign of him ever being pardoned for it. We always like libertarians always classify him in the same vein as like Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and those guys. Basically, people
even
deserve to be pardoned.
Yeah, or even for him, like clemency. I don't think he did anything wrong or deserve prison, but if it stays on his record, whatever, as long as he doesn't die in prison. Like, I don't think it's unreasonable to be like, all right, he's now been in there for 11 years for creating a website. That's enough.
Yep. Buddy says, we're all looking extra handsome tonight, just FYI. So if you were feeling down about yourself, just know that you're extra handsome today. All right, let's go to this week's big news that everybody's talking about right now. The Baltimore Bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, collapses after powerless cargo ship rams into support column. 6 presumed dead. Let's click play on that. I think it shows.
So at approximately 01:40 hours this morning, our 911 center dispatched a call to the Baltimore City Fire Department for a report of a water rescue in the Patapsco River in the area of the Key Bridge. At about 01:50 hours, our first unit arrived on scene and reported a complete collapse of the Key Bridge.
Personnel on board the ship were able to alert the Maryland Department of Transportation that they had lost control of their vessel, as you all know and reported.
That is wild.
As a result, local authorities were able to close the bridge to traffic before the bridge was struck, which undoubtedly saved lives.
Those
I've directed my team to move
were-
heaven and earth to reopen the port and rebuild the bridge as soon as humanly possible. It's my intention that the federal government will pay for the entire cost of reconstructing that bridge, and I expect the Congress to support my effort.
This is no ordinary bridge.
Do you want to keep going on
No,
that? Or?
you can pause it, or you can
Okay.
go back to full screen.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, Francis Scott Key Bridge collapses in Baltimore, and 8 people were on the bridge when it happened. They were all workers, basically filling potholes and fixing the street. They were all migrant workers. 6 of them have not been found. 2 of them were able to be rescued. So there's at least 6 people dead because of this bridge collapse. What was y'all's first thoughts? Did anybody immediately go to conspiracy or just to the sad side of it?
Well, we don't have Stephen or Alden on tonight, so
It's
we're less likely to get that angle.
Mm-hmm. Evan, what were your first thoughts on it?
Well, I didn't think. The very first thought that occurs is that, well, gosh, was this on purpose? Was this intentional? That's the first question that comes to mind. But everything that I've seen, it just seems like an accident that was kind of waiting to happen. The bridge was obviously vulnerable.
Yeah.
There was no protection. Number one, there was no protection for those pillars, and number two, the ships that are going through now are many times larger than they were when the bridge was first constructed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really obvious that they hadn't thought of this scenario. But it reminded me a lot, as I said, I lived in Japan, of the Fukushima nuclear accident, where, if you look at historical tsunamis, like half of them occur in Japan. And so it was just a matter of time before a tsunami was going to hit the Fukushima nuclear plant. And they knew it was vulnerable, but they just sort of, played, well, it won't have, probably won't happen, but it did happen. And I think it's the exact same thinking here. They knew it was vulnerable, but they just sort of, thought, well, it won't happen in our lifetime, so we'll just forget about it. And I just think that this happens a lot. It happens way too much, and when it does happen, it's unimaginably disastrous.
Yeah.
Like what's going to happen with that port? It's going to be closed for a long time. People are going to have trouble commuting, which is going to disrupt many lives. Yeah. And it's something that could have been avoided, just like the Fukushima accident could have been avoided really simply if they just, put those backup generators in a watertight room instead of having them, in a basement that could be flooded. Yeah. So that was my first thought.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. It reminds me like something about our crumbling infrastructure. It reminds me of all the like insane number of train accidents that happen every year. Cause we get, we heard about the one in like Ohio. Was that where it was last year?
East Palestine.
Yes.
Palestine. Yeah. Well, that was only like the tip of the iceberg. Once you started looking into it, there's like 1,200 train accidents a year in the US. And a lot of it is due to the tracks not being maintained properly. And so I don't know, something about it. I mean, if you drive on the highways anywhere in the US, you can tell that our infrastructure is not the greatest. I think it probably used to be, but is no longer the case.
I think my favorite comment on a Instagram video I was watching of this happening was somebody said, another 100 billion to Ukraine should fix this right up. And the funniest thing about that is that, like, I'm sure it's not that we're not spending any money on infrastructure. Like, it seems like every year for my whole life, the president's going around, having infrastructure weeks and talking about how we need all this money for infrastructure. And Congress can't trip over themselves. They're tripping over themselves in order to give more and more funding. And it just feels like it's a big money pitch, with a lot of things that the government claims that, if we just spend even more money on this, then it'll finally be better. And I think it's one of those things where, because it's an extremely inefficient entity that's attempting to construct the infrastructure, that they're doomed to never really do it right.
Yeah. I mean, it always feels like we're playing catch up. So I don't know how you ever actually catch up to things just decaying over time. And especially if you don't build it right the first time. I mean, just think about like how many things in the Roman world are still standing today. How many things in the US world are going to be standing in 1,000 years? Like very, very few, I would imagine.
Yeah, the most surprising part to me was that they were filling potholes on the bridge. Like, that doesn't seem to be done at all here in Atlanta. It's just we live with those potholes forever now.
We do live with those potholes forever. Like, once there, it's a landmark.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, when we talk about infrastructure, it's like no matter where you drive now, the roads just seem in really crappy shape, where they've got all these little Band-Aid solutions here and there for the potholes. But, it seems like the whole road needs to be resurfaced.
Yeah.
And then I fly in and out of LAX a lot. They've made some improvements, but it's pretty much kind of how it was when I was living there when I was a boy. They haven't done much. It's just it's an embarrassment. I had once I flew into LAX at 2 a.m. and I had a flight at 6 a.m. So I couldn't stay at a hotel, and I would have liked to have stayed at a someplace within the hotel, a sort of a transit lounge, and there was nothing. So I actually had to sleep outside at the ticket counter before the people came in. The airport employees came in. That was the only place to sleep. There was no place to sleep for somebody in my position. And I know every other airport I've gone to, like in Singapore or Tokyo, they've got these things called transit lounges where you can you can, catch a quick nap or something between flights. And it was just, I was out there exposed. I could have been, at that time, anybody could come into the airport. And so, yeah, it's just, that was the thing about the potholes on the bridge that sparked that.
For sure.
Yeah, Jake, I see you bringing up this very insightful commentator's comments about how the construction cost of infrastructure in the U.S. is crazy. He brought up the example of like $150 million elevator. There's the famous John Stossel video trying to figure out why a very small public restroom in Central Park costs $2 million to build. Right. And it's all the corruption with the contractors. It's all the having to deal with the unions where you've got to pay 10 guys to stand around while one guy actually does the work. Like my dad works in satellite engineering, so he's often like preparing sets that are about to be like filmed on the news. Yeah. And he hates doing it in New York because he and his crew know how to do everything, but they can't do anything. They have to pay this huge union crew to do everything that they would rather just do themselves, and the costs are ridiculous. And there's all, with infrastructure in particular, it's all these, environmental impact reports that you have to do, and to make sure that you're not gonna be endangering some obscure endangered species of frog by building this bridge. There's all this red tape that the money, the flow of money going in is not the issue. It's the lack of competition.
Yes,
that's the other thing too. Like if there's potholes on the road, it's not like you can be like, well, I'm gonna go to a competing road. There are no competing roads. And I mean, back when there actually were competing roads, like in the 17 and 1800s, starting in the UK, but the US had some private roads too. You would have these competing private road networks, and they were actually very good quality because there were real options, which meant that each road builder had to not waste all their money, unlike today.
Well, if it's any consolation, I can tell you that this is not a U.S. only problem. I can give you one example. When I was living in Japan, outside of my apartment, every night for 2 years, they had a construction crew doing something. And I don't know what they were doing, but it was not a sort of project that would normally take 2 years. It probably could have taken 3 weeks. And they had half the guys or 3/4 of the guys just sitting around kind of watching the other guys maybe digging a little bit. But it was just obvious government made work. And so, like I say, this is, I think this is a common feature, and I say feature kind of facetiously, of governments around the world, making, spending money, burning money to hire people to basically sit around.
Yeah. I mean, a great example of actually incentivizing people to work faster happened here in Atlanta. One of our overpasses burned down a couple of years ago. And the Atlanta government basically said, if whoever takes this contract can rebuild it within, I think it was 2 weeks or a month, we'll give you so-and-so extra dollars. They had that thing rebuilt almost instantly. It happened so quickly because they wanted that bonus incentive.
I just say one of the things that I've tried to propose, or I've proposed on my blog, is we put an end, or we really rethink government employment, in particular, maybe putting a 5-year limit on government employment. Now, the idea behind this is that you prevent people from getting into that bureaucratic mentality where people work where people start aiming for the lowest common denominator. Yeah. The bureaucratic mentality, which I've seen in Peru, I've seen in Japan, this, you pretend to work and, waste a lot of time and completely inefficient. So we put a 5-year limit on it, and we give them incentives to come up with ways to save money. So if they find a way to save money, they get a percentage of whatever savings that their idea is going to help implement. So we get away from this idea of, oh gosh, it's coming to the end of the year. We've got this money. We've got to spend this money or we're going to lose the budget type of thing. We want to turn that on its head. We want to give, and we want to open these up to, recent grads, people who are looking for their first job and who have creative, interesting ideas, and they don't have some long-term vested interest, bureaucratic vested interest in their long-term career. And so that's why I think that we should try to limit government employment. And some people might say, well, gosh, don't we want experienced government employees? Some of these jobs require lots of experience. And I say, well, if a job requires years and years of experience, I think we need to rethink the job. Let's make it so that you don't have to have, so many years of experience to navigate all this bureaucratic, nightmare. Let's simplify the jobs, have people come in, recent college grads, give them incentives to come up with ways to save money with no incentive, no long-term, vested interest in the organization, and then move on. And we don't have to give them lifetime pensions either. We can give them one severance pay, or just something a little extra money as they're leaving their office. But we don't have long-term, lifetime government pensions for these people either. So that's one of the things that I would like to see.
I'm definitely a fan of removing lifetime government pensions and disincentivizing people from just getting into government because they know they're going to have a secure job for the rest of their life. Like that's an idiotic way to go about running a business. You would never do that. Like Apple would never just not monitor what their employees are doing and not hire and fire people based on how they're performing. But it seems to happen that way in the government every single time someone's hired.
Let me just give you one real quick example. I lived in China, and in China, nobody would get fired. So you would go into a shop and the service, was awful. They would literally throw the change at you and because they wouldn't be fired. And here in the US, I went to the post office once and I saw 2 post office employees haranguing a third one because the third one was helping a woman who didn't speak the language very well, was going out of her way to help this employee. And these 2 others were haranguing her for going out of her way for helping it. It was like, you're making us look bad and we don't like that. You're not supposed to do anything extra in your job to help the employee and you're making us look bad. They were just in front of everybody haranguing this third employee. And it's just this pressure to conform to the lowest common denominator. And I've seen it elsewhere too, in Japan and in Peru. And that's why we think we need to rethink this whole thing of government employment and try to make our government a lot more efficient when it comes to spending money.
That is a really interesting idea because people talk a lot of term limits, but you very rarely hear people talk about essentially term limits for the bureaucracy, because obviously there's obviously a lot of grift that happens with elected officials, but there's just as much, if not even more, grift with the bureaucrats because nobody has any idea what they're up to. And we've seen time and time again that they act in ways that they do favors for all their friends in the industry, like the U.S. Forest. I forget if it's the U.S. Forest Service or whoever, the Department of Interior or who's ever in charge of like the logging rights. We've seen it happen where they just give out the logging rights to their friends as fast as possible so that they can reap the temporary rewards, and then they have a nice plush retirement after, because it's once they're out of their position, it doesn't matter how much of the forest is left. It only matters that they did the right favors for the right people when they were in power. So if we essentially had the equivalent of term limits for that, there wouldn't be as much time for them to establish their grift.
Yes, we want to get rid of the government or this lifetime bureaucratic mentality. I don't want to dominate the conversation here. I just want to give a couple of examples that every former government employee that I've worked in, every business owner I've talked to who's worked with a former government gives horror stories because they come in with this bureaucratic mentality of playing games, political games, pretending to work, but not knowing how to work, and it seems that the government employment actually kind of spoils them, and they never quite recover. And so that's why we don't want people to develop that. That's why I think we want to put a 5-year limit on government employee. You get in there, you learn, how to work, you give us ideas to make things more efficient, and then you move on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate that idea. When we're about limiting the government in any possible way and having people not be able to serve their entire life in the government and help their friends constantly and help themselves I mean, sounds like a great idea.
Well, yeah, not only that, I can tell you this, I've had the displeasure of working with corrupt government employees who, if you get on their bad side, oh man, they will literally I've had my business threatened by having an angry bureaucrat, a bureaucrat who actually hates me because they're in bed with the competition. And they will do everything. They abuse their power, and you're powerless to take them on because, who do you go to? With their friends, the organization that's supposed to be monitoring the bureaucrats is in the bed with the very bureaucrats. You have nobody to turn to. And, so, you're preaching to the choir here when it comes to, the evils of bureaucracies and lifetime government employment. And so I think we need to get rid of that whole concept.
Agreed.
Yeah, I did just want to quickly return to one of the comments that you put up from our friend in the comments about catching up to Chinese infrastructure. I do just want to point out that obviously if you just see highlight reels of Chinese infrastructure, it looks really cool, but they have a very bad habit of building roads to places that nobody wants to go, to cities that nobody lives in. So it's a lot of waste, because it's all being centrally planned and it's infrastructure that the government wants, but the people don't really have any use for. I don't know, Evan, if you have any firsthand experience with that, but I don't think we should hold up China as a good example of government infrastructure.
Agreed.
No, I sure hope I didn't give that impression that I.
No, I was responding to one of our commentators.
Okay. No, but actually, yes, it's it's again where they're just making these infrastructure projects to make work, but they don't really serve any purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And useless make government work programs. I mean, whether we're talking about infrastructure or whether we're talking about defense, every dollar has to be thought of as a sacred national resource. And if you waste that, that should be thought of as a form of treason. I mean, for every dollar, I mean, that sounds extreme, and I'm sorry if that does sound extreme, but
sounds fine to me.
When you talk about like what's going on with the Pentagon, where they were just dumping all sorts of money with no accountability, and people are these defense companies, they just spend, and the bureaucrat, or not the bureaucrats, the politicians, they think that sending blank checks to the Pentagon, which is just another government bureaucracy, is good for their campaign, but it's not good for the strength of the country. What's good for the strength of the country is spending money efficiently and getting the best bang for the buck. And when you're just sending all sorts of money that could be used to reduce our taxes, to give kids scholarships to schools, or to, well, let's just say build useful infrastructure, that is what it should be for. Every dollar needs to be thought of as a precious natural resource. And so, government waste has to be thought of as something that's quite treacherous.
Yes, I'll completely agree with that. Real quick, we've strayed far from the bridge collapse conspiracies.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I'm happy with tangents on this show, where we go down some weird tangents sometimes. So it's all good.
That one was actually pretty closely related.
That was
it's all kind of related.
That was a great.
This is the most reasonable discussion we've ever had in the history of this podcast.
It's because, Evan, I don't know if you never watched the show, two of our guys really hit on the conspiracy theories, and they're obsessed with them for the most part. I mean, they bring up great points every time, but we definitely go down some crazy rabbit holes sometimes. Speaking of, Here is a video talking about the black box on the ship that hit the bridge.
It was provided to the NTSB upon our arrival. Approximately 6 hours of VDR data was provided to the NTSB. The recording included the time period from midnight to 6 a.m. By regulation, the VDR is required to record 30 days of history, and the NTSB is continuing to obtain more data. The times expressed below, as recorded by the VDR and converted to local Eastern Daylight Time. All information is preliminary and subject to final validation. The VDR data is comprised of audio from the ship's bridge, as well as recordings from the ship's VHF or very high frequency radios. The quality of that audio varies widely because of the high levels of background noise and alarms. Additional analysis will be performed at the NTSB's lab to filter out the audio and improve its quality. Additionally, the VDR recorded limited sensor data. An example of that data recorded includes the ship's speed, engine RPM, ship's heading, and rudder angle, as well as some alarm information. NTSB engineers are working to identify and validate all of that data. The VDR recorded the ship's departure from Seagirt Marine Terminal at approximately 12:39. It recorded the ship's transit outbound in the Fort McHenry Channel and the striking of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. By 1:07, the ship had entered the channel, and by 1:24, the ship was underway on a true heading of approximately 141 in the Fort McHenry Channel at a speed of over ground of approximately 8 knots or 9.2 miles per hour.
This guy needs to read.
At 01:24 and 59 seconds, numerous audible alarms were recorded on the ship's bridge audio. About the same time, VDR sensor data ceased recording. However, the VDR audio continued to record using the redundant power source. At around 01:26 and 2 seconds, the VDR resumed recording sensor data, and during this time, there were steering commands and rudder orders recorded on the audio. At around 01:26 and 39 seconds, the ship's pilot made a general VHF radio call for tugs in the vicinity to assist. About this time, the Pilot Association dispatcher phoned the MDTA duty officer regarding the blackout. Around 01:27 and 4 seconds, the pilot ordered the Dally to drop the port anchor and ordered additional steering commands. Around 1:27 and 25 seconds,
Are we going
the
to
pilot issued a radio call.
I don't know if we're gonna watch that whole thing. Basically, the thing people are saying is there were 2 minutes prior to the crash that were just gone, which some blame on the fact that the power kept going out on the ship, but some say that, as with the audio recording, it's supposed to have a redundant power system so that it can continue recording whatever is happening with all the commands and the rudder and the steering and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. This just has been propelling conspiracy theories, basically saying that someone turned it off for 2 minutes to do something nefarious and then turned it back on 2 minutes later.
So I've watched more episodes of air disasters than I care to admit. And the recovery of the black box is a big element of the show because obviously it's planes and not boats. But the idea is that the black box would contain a lot of information about the last moments of the flight, which could explain why it crashed. And, they're built to withstand some pretty bad circumstances since you want to get them after the plane has crashed. So, they are supposed to have run on backup power sources and be very resistant to everything. And a lot of the times they can find them and they can read them, but not all the time. And especially if the power is going in and out, and then, maybe something happened with the backup power as well, or maybe it wasn't set up right, or I don't know, these big container ships probably don't have as much focus on the black boxes as passenger planes do.
Mm.
So I'm not saying that this is conclusive proof that there was no foul play, but I'm saying that it's reasonable to think that there was just some kind of malfunction.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. After, because DC Drano, I don't know if you follow him on Instagram. He posts some pretty good stuff, but with the message that he wrote over the video, it seemed like it was definitive that both recordings went out and all, like, basically his post was misleading, I thought, but a lot of people ran with it and basically used that to continue down the conspiracy theory route, which actually, for once, I'm not at all on board with the conspiracy theory route.
And even if it was intentional, like, what are they going to shout? Execute Order 66, like, right before they do it. It's like,
exactly.
You would just be like, all right, guys, don't talk around the black box, but we're doing this thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that was the end of what I want to talk about with that ship in Baltimore. So Hamdi Ben asks, what's the reason for the passage of that ship by that bridge? Is it a normal route? Yeah, no, I think it was a normal route. Had
to go under the bridge to get to different, like, ports and shipping areas inside the harbor.
Yeah, and he says the ship looked higher than the bridge. No, it would have definitely fit underneath the middle section, which is what it was going for at the beginning. You can tell from its trajectory. You can go online and watch what route they were supposed to travel and what route they ended up traveling, and it's very clear that they were going for the middle of the bridge, and they weren't trying to hit the whatever it's called.
Well, the only thing that seemed a little odd to me was that apparently they lost propulsion about 4 minutes before the impact. And if it was heading toward the pillar, a ship that big was heading toward the pillar 4 minutes before it hit the pillar. I mean, even with propulsion and everything, a ship that big, you can steer it so that it would completely miss the pillar? I mean, I'm guessing it could. It just seemed that when I think of a huge ship, that it requires quite a bit of time, to get it to move even a little. And so I would have thought that I could understand if it went out, 15 minutes before hitting the pillar and it just drifted in. But 4 minutes, they should have been in a direction that would have completely cleared it, because if they weren't, even with propulsion, like I say, how could they have steered the ship? Maybe it's the ship's more nimble than I know. I'm not a ship expert, but that was the only thing that occurred to me.
Yeah, it did kind of look like it made a hard turn at one point. And I'm not sure if that was based on the fact that when the power went out, the current affected it, or just something nefarious happened on board, or just a malfunction. Like, I don't
the
really
current, know. The current. I mean, that's such a huge ship. Unless we were talking about an immensely powerful current, it would. I mean, that's just it's such mass that it would take a lot of energy to move that ship significantly, even with a strong current. But I mean, I don't know. Like I say, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't buy into that there was something behind this, and if it was obvious that 4 minutes before impact, it was off course, even with the propulsion, then that would have been obviously quite shocking.
Yeah.
But again, I was a little surprised that just 4 minutes prior to the impact, when it had propulsion, it was still heading right toward the pillar.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a weird one, and we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure more data will come out and we'll get to reanalyze things. But for now, let's go on to our next topic. Zach, let's watch the first few minutes.
One more thing to add, that if anybody does want to explore the conspiracy theory angle a little bit more, check out my episode with Brad Binkley on the Propaganda Report. I was just on his show. And unfortunately, I had to be the Fed. I didn't believe that it was a cyber attack. That's no fun. I want to go on his show and just go down the rabbit hole with him, but
fair enough. Yeah, Zach Varnell abandoned us and went on Freedom Act Radio. went on a propaganda report with Brad Binkley. It was a good episode. I very much enjoyed it. Yeah, I would highly recommend y'all go watch it, go listen to it. It's a good episode.
Wow, this is really a crossover extravaganza. Binkley's on our show, you're on his show.
It's pretty great. I love it.
When do I get to go on another show?
You know, when you get asked, Zane, and when I give you permission, that's when. All right, let's go to the next one. So RFK picked his VP candidate this week. Her name is Nicole Shanahan. She's a tech CEO, used to be married to Sergey Brin. This is the first, we're just going to listen to the first 2 minutes or so of her speech at the announcement party. So here you go.
Hi, everybody.
I'm not hearing anything.
And thank you so much
I
for
am.
being
We're
here
hearing
you
today.
Oh, okay.
It is so good to be here in Oakland. This city will always have a special place in my heart. You know, I grew up just a few miles from this very spot. My mother, who's standing right there with her phone up, she immigrated here from Guangzhou, China. And my late father was an Irish and German American. I want to tell you a little bit
fewer
about my
cheers.
childhood so you can understand the source of my politics and convictions. My mother's first job when she came to the United States in 1983 was as a live-in caretaker to an elderly woman here at Lake Merritt. By the time I was born, she worked as a dental office secretary. My father loved my brother and I dearly, but he was very troubled, plagued by substance abuse, and he struggled to keep a job. From watching my father and his struggles, I learned not to be judgmental. He was doing the best he could. I think of him when I see the statistics of the millions of Americans who are addicted, depressed, or suffering. This is one of the epidemics of our time. It affects nearly every American family. I wish my experience was unusual, but it's not. It has become part of my determination to do something for our country.
All right.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's good enough. I thought she got to the juicier stuff quicker, but I guess not. So his pick for his VP is Nicole Shanahan, not Nicole. Is it Nicole? Did I say it right? Yes, Nicole Shanahan. And yeah, like I said, she's a tech CEO. She's very young. She's 38. It has brought up questions of whether or not she could actually run the country if he were to be elected and somehow lose capacity to be able to actually be the president. He's been flirting with the Libertarian Party for the past 6 months or so, basically hinting at trying to get the nomination of the Libertarian Party, which would put him on ballots in every single state, which would greatly ease the problems with his campaign, because independents generally find it incredibly difficult to get on the ballot. And the fact that he chose a VP that is absurdly wealthy leads me to believe that she is going to help pay to get him on the ballot everywhere, which costs a fortune. And the fact that he nominated this person, who we'll get into some of her politics here in a bit, but she is very much has no alignment at all with the Libertarian Party. So, and basically this leads me to believe that there's just not a chance in hell that he's going to get our nomination in May. I don't know, Zane, did y'all watch any of the speech or any?
I didn't watch any of the speech, but it did occur to me that if he is announcing a vice presidential nominee at this point, that he's probably not even going to try for the Libertarian nomination, because unlike the Republican and Democratic conventions, which are just glorified pep rallies, not only do we actually like nominate our presidential candidate at the convention, which has been widely reported in the stories about Kennedy maybe trying to get the Libertarian nomination because he could just show up at the convention and say, "I'm here, please nominate me." And in theory, the delegates could nominate him. But not only that, it's not a unified ticket like the Republicans and Democrats, where they already go in with the president and vice presidential pair already decided. We nominate at the Libertarian National Convention. We nominate the president, and then separately we nominate the vice presidential candidate, and that's the ticket. So if he was serious about trying for the Libertarian nomination, this fact would not escape him. Right. And I would have assumed that he would have picked somebody that would be more palatable to libertarians and not a Silicon Valley CEO that is not libertarian whatsoever. So especially, Jake, with you bringing up the point about, oh, well, maybe Shanahan's just going to foot the bill to get independent ballot access so he doesn't need to work with libertarians. I think that he's probably done with that.
I agree. I did watch the entire production. It was incredibly annoying. I hated the whole thing. Like, I generally like RFK. Like I like a lot of the, I like how he handles himself. I like how he will talk to anybody, and doesn't just shut people off just because he doesn't agree with them. I like his attitude towards most people and most things. I don't like a lot of what he would do policy wise, but I thought his nomination was weird. I don't think it will help him with any particular group. Like, I don't know. Other than getting on the ballot, I don't know how this helps him politically. I don't really know what he's thinking with this, other than the fact that she could fund him getting ballot access. I don't know. Evan, do you have any thoughts on RFK and his whole campaign?
Well, number one, I think that the money aspect should not be ignored. I mean, let's face it, if you're going to pick somebody, you probably want to pick somebody who can, provide you with the funds that you might have trouble raising on your own. And so yeah, I think from that point of view, it makes some sense. I also, I actually like it when a candidate picks somebody who has a different perspective of things. I don't like it when you have a presidential candidate, and vice president, who are basically just clones of one another. I like it when a candidate's got the courage to pick somebody who thinks differently and brings different perspectives, because I think the president is better served when he or she is surrounded by people who bring different perspectives. Number three, I think that the choice was obviously to appeal to younger voters, especially ones who like the idea of having a quote unquote a woman of color as the vice presidential candidate here. That means a lot to a lot of people, instead of what it's usually been over our history, two white guys. And so I don't really know much about her. I feel nor do any of us actually. And so I would like to know a little bit more about her, as well as Robert, as RFK. I won't deny that I just have some superficial knowledge of what he stands for.
Yeah.
I know that he has, one of his big claims to fame is his belief in conspiracy theories. I tend to be very skeptical of, in general, of conspiracy theories, and I can give you a little bit of reason why in a bit. But I just tend to want to see the proof in the pudding before I start going down that route. And
That's fair.
I mean, let me just say very briefly, as I've said, I've lived around the world. I've heard every kind of conspiracy theory you can imagine. I had one guy, a Japanese guy that I barely knew. He invited me to dinner. He spent the whole dinner talking to me about how World War II was a conspiracy, a Jewish conspiracy to destroy Japan and Germany. I had somebody tell me that the tsunami in 2004 was an American conspiracy. I had somebody tell me in 2011 that tsunami in Japan was an American conspiracy. The sarin attack in Tokyo was the U.S. Army. I have heard every conspiracy theory you can imagine. So I'm a little skeptical when it comes to those things. So just, because I've heard so many crazy. We could even make up some conspiracy theories now. I mean, right here. What? I don't know. RFK and his party, they're kidnapping kids to feed them to Bigfoot.
Yes,
That's fair.
so I definitely share your requirement of some evidence for these series. I think the reason why more and more people, and especially libertarians, start getting weird and really don't like it when we are accused of believing in conspiracy theories is it's essentially a thought terminating cliche where somebody can just say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, and then that's just the end of discussion, no matter how much evidence you actually have. Like a lot of times, things that have been labeled conspiracy theories in the past couple of years have been, there's been tons of evidence to support them, and they've later essentially been proven to be true. Just with the pandemic and the lockdowns, if you don't think that lockdowns work, then you're a conspiracy theorist. Turns out lockdowns don't work. That's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you don't think that masks work, you're a conspiracy theorist. Turns out they don't really work. If you think that it's possible for you to get COVID after being vaccinated, you're a conspiracy theorist. Turns out you can get COVID after being vaccinated. So it's just all these things that are being labeled conspiracy theories, not because there is no evidence that of them being true, but because the media and the politicians don't want people to be able to consider them or talk about them. And the easiest way of achieving that is to just say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Stop thinking about that.
Right. I think it's true. If somebody has concerns and thinks that something there might be, if there's something, let's face it, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are occurring, and that it's we got to keep that in mind, and look for the evidence to bring that to light. And so I don't necessarily I listen to somebody who, I've always listened to people seriously when they do this, but or when they give me, or when they want to tell me about theories. But as you said, I want to see the evidence, and I want to see multiple independent sources of evidence, not just some anonymous guy on a website who's spewing out stuff. Part of the issue is there's a lot of emotion. Our country has become very tribal, and there are a lot of charged emotions. And when conspiracy theories play into those emotions or stoke those emotions, I think people are more inclined to believe them because they want to believe them. People will believe things that they want to believe. And for example, if we said, we started a conspiracy theory right here with all the the charged emotions that are going on in our country, if we said something like Donald Trump has got a bordello in his basement in Mar-a-Lago. Now, a lot of people are going to believe that right out of, because they want to. They want to, or Biden. We could say that, well, Biden, he's really a pedophile in secret, and people are going to believe that. Some people are going to believe that automatically, not because they have evidence, just because they want to believe it.
It's true.
And that's one thing we've got to try to, I think we need to address is we need to turn down the emotions. We need to make our elections more focused on ideas and not tribalism and emotion manipulation. And we need to make our media credible again, because if you don't have credible media, then it's a lot easier for people to start going down rabbit holes. You don't have an anchor of what people most consider to be, the truth. which is what we all want. We all want to know what is really happening.
Yeah, so I would agree with you that everything that you just described would definitely be an improvement over what we have. I'm just making the point that in the current situation, a lot of the time when people use the word conspiracy theory to describe something, it's in order to shut down the debate. It's to revoke the license position that does not toe the party line about COVID or the lockdowns or about that stuff. It's to kick off anybody from YouTube that wants to, this show has gotten multiple YouTube strikes in the past for just having conversations about this stuff that we have evidence for. It's like, so we need to be very careful that we're not inviting even more censorship than we already have.
Yeah.
Well, I have what I like to say is the real conspiracy. The real conspiracy is there's a shadowy worldwide group that seeks to sow chaos by spreading silly conspiracy theories.
Is this
That's a joke. That's a joke.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I echo what both y'all said. I do think that, Evan, if we implement a lot of what you said, it would definitely make things better. And Zane, absolutely. People use the term conspiracy theory just to shut down arguments that they don't agree with and they don't actually have an argument against. And
to lump you in with truly crazy stuff. Like if somebody says that they're not telling us the 100% truth about JFK, they want to lump you in with people who think lizards run the world or something. So
right, exactly.
Yeah, here's something that a lot of people don't know, which is that the phrase conspiracy theory itself was popularized by the CIA that wanted to discredit people that were looking into the actual things that they were doing, like the Tuskegee experiment and MK Ultra and all that.
Yeah.
So it's like, even the Gulf of Tonkin, where people were like, oh, if you don't believe the official narrative that that our boats were actually attacked by the Vietnamese, then you're a conspiracy theorist. But it turns out that it actually was a conspiracy just to give a blank check for the Vietnam War.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I will say this. This is the last thing I'll say about this because I don't want to dominate the conversation anymore. What I do believe the real conspiracy is, and I'm being serious about this, is that we have politicians who are addicted to power because power is the most addictive thing there is. And once you get it, you don't want to let it go. And you have special interests that are greedy and they want to keep their business model and protect their business model and use government to do that. And so you have this symbiotic relationship between these special interests, greedy special interests who put their own profits ahead of the good of society, and these politicians who put their own political careers and their partisan interests ahead of the country. And that is, for quote unquote, any better way to put it, that's what I think the real conspiracy is. And that's what we need to break in order to have our government work for us again, instead of being what I call it, the special interest enabling organization.
Yeah.
And power is shown to be addictive. And I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, that's why the Syrian dictator will dump, barrel bombs on innocent civilians. That's why the North Korean dictator sends families to gruesome prison camps. This is why Putin kills his political opponents. And this is why our politicians will say anything and do anything to stay in power, because it's addictive. As John Boehner, the representative, the House of former Speaker of the House, he said, you give people a little power and it completely changes them. And it's just like any addiction. Somebody gets addicted to alcohol, they completely change. Addicted to gambling, they completely change. Somebody gets addicted to drugs, they completely change. And the same thing happens with power. And so I think the first step we need to do is to make it impossible for our politicians to get addicted to power. And that's why we have to have a one-term limit. That's my feeling on this.
The trick is getting the
power
addicted politicians to vote term limits onto themselves.
Well, that's why you've got to get people who are going to run for office who commit to changing, who commit to staying in there only one term, and who commit to bringing about a change so that that's codified.
Yeah, that it's a long battle. That's a long road. I like the long-term idea of it, because it takes a long time to change a country this big. So I think it would take a very long time for that to actually happen, to get enough influence with any party that isn't the Democrats or Republicans in order to make that actually happen. But I do think that it is actually feasible in the long term. I just think it would.
But you
take
know,
much
yeah, I
longer.
don't agree. I actually disagree with it. I think change can come about quickly because I think people in this country are so sick and tired of what they're seeing that I think the country is actually ripe for change. And I think that if people buy into this idea that our problem is our power addicted politicians and their relations with their re-election enabling special interests, I think there's a good chance that change can come about a lot more quickly than you might think.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay.
I'm just a lot more optimistic because I think people are just absolutely sick and tired and rightfully so of what they're seeing right now. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, you could be right, and I'm fine with an optimistic viewpoint, and I think it's very helpful because if everybody was like me, we'd be in a very pessimistic place a lot of the time. So,
Well, if everybody was like you, we'd live in a libertarian utopia. So.
oh my gosh, how delightful would that be?
I mean, maybe
Anyway, Evan,
if power is the most addictive thing, then maybe Jake would just be awful too.
Maybe
Like getting people in. I agree that getting people in to vote for term limits would be like only hit the crack pipe once.
Yeah,
Like, people might say they're going to do it, but when they actually get in there and get addicted to crack, who knows?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you would have. I mean, look, if somebody campaigns on saying, "Okay, I agree, we want to make the country, we want to change our politics so people can only serve one term," they get into office and then they say, "Well, I kind of like being here. I want to stay here." I think that would be such a violation of what they had promised to do that people wouldn't reelect them. We put you in there specifically. We put you in there specifically for you to make this change and for you to say, "Well, I'm against reelection, except when it comes to me." I mean, that's BS. Get the hell out. Put somebody in there who really means it.
there we go.
It's like if Jake, the doctor, had to prescribe to you a very addictive medicine. What would be the way to keep from getting you addicted? Well, you give the pills very limited amount and spread apart, and that's what you have to do with political power. You give it to it in limited segments, and anybody who's in office, the idea is that they can't use their present office to even run for another office. They have to wait 2 years before they can run for another office, but they can never run for the same office again because we want them concentrating on doing the job, not on advancing their political career.
Yeah. And I'd say you also have to go in knowing that you're going into a potentially addictive scenario.
Exactly.
And warn yourself that you're not going to get into that. Just like if you had to take pain pills for your back or something.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
You have to surround yourself with good people as well. Like, so for like an example, here in Georgia, our friend Shane Hazel ran for governor. If Shane won the governorship back in 2022, none of us would have let him run all over it and abuse his power because he surrounded himself with extremely devout libertarian thinkers who would be very happy to confront him in any way, shape, and form. And so, like, surrounding yourself with good people is a fantastic way to stop that from happening, or at least hedge your bets from that happening.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this also. I told you earlier that I have a 2-drink limit. Well, one of the reasons is because we have so much alcoholism in my family. So I might be genetically predisposed to becoming an alcoholic. But why am I not an alcoholic? Because I'm aware of the danger and I take care to not go down that path. When you're aware that you are susceptible to an addiction, then that's the first step to avoiding it.
Yeah. There we go.
So, yeah, I would agree that with you, Evan, that the people are sick and tired in general, but I do not think that they'd in general be capable of articulating what they're sick and tired of, and that they can just be propagandized by whatever politician is already in power into believing whatever the politician wants. You know, I mean, just the first example that I can think of is how the Biden White House would desperately want everybody to believe that inflation is the result of greedy corporations. Obviously, if you know any economics, that doesn't make any sense at all. But most people don't know very much economics and don't think deeply about the issues except to listen to whatever politician that they like. And I guess I'm just very skeptical that we can even rely on the people to put good people in power. And especially when, you know, the system we have attracts the worst people, the people that most desperately want to rule over the rest of society. That's the kind of people that the most desire to want to enter into politics. And to think that we can get those people, we can get enough good people in power to wrestle the power away from all the bad people that are there, and that the public would have enough wherewithal to see that through. I guess I'm just very skeptical of that.
See, I'm more optimistic. I actually have, I actually believe more in that the people, if you talk to them straight, you talk to them in a mature way. You present ideas. You don't try to manipulate their emotions. I believe that I'm just more optimistic that more people will buy into this. And the other, I would say about politicians, it comes down also to this. If you listen to, believe in, and vote for people with zero principles who will say anything to get in office, what kind of country can you expect to have? Our politicians have zero interest or zero principles. And one of the examples I give is, forgive me if I'm dominating the conversation, I'll keep it short, but let's just talk about, how things were in the Jim Crow era. If a white man raped a black woman, well, that's just boys being boys, boys out having fun. But if a black man raped a white woman, well, then that's lynching time. Okay, so same crime, the only difference is the color of the perpetrator and the victim. Well, this is exactly what happens with our politicians. Our politicians, their point of view changes completely if you just change the names of the people involved or change the names of the parties involved.
It's true.
And if this whole principle of equality under the law applies across the board, when you have to focus on the action, not on the person. And when you start focusing on the person, then you just go, the whole the foundation of civilization crumbles, because laws can then be weaponized to go against certain types of people. You have to focus on the action that was committed. And so, unfortunately, our politicians don't do that. Our politicians, if a Democrat does it, and I'm a Democrat, and a Democrat does it, it's no big deal. But if a Republican does it, it's crime of the century, and vice versa. And it shouldn't be that way. These are people with zero principles who will say anything to stay in power.
Completely agree with that. Which is why, like, I understand when you were saying, like, you like that RFK chose somebody who has a different outlook on things and a different background, and different ideas. I do think the one thing that you should, if you're going to pick a VP, they need to align with you on principles, because principles are everything. I mean, exactly what you're saying. Like, if you don't have principles, if you don't live by a certain code, then you don't stand for anything.
Exactly.
And you'll just flip-flop immediately, which is why I don't particularly like his choice. And XTFICV, goodness gracious, get a new username, man. Asks, why did you say RFK chose poorly? I think he chose poorly if he wanted the Libertarian nomination. That was my whole point, was if he wanted the LP nomination, he chose poorly, because Shanahan is all about social programs and wants to put more money into social programs, wants more government. Apologies, there's a phone ringing next to me. Wants more money to go into social programs that actually don't end up helping anybody and end up hurting far more people. And so that's why I said that RFK chose poorly. And I know it's a terrible transition, but Buddy has the best comment. He says, trivia. Agreed. All right, y'all. We're going to be doing some trivia here for the next little bit. I'll explain the rules here in a minute. Add to the stage. There we go. All right, everybody. Welcome to Libations Trivia. Evan, I'll go over the rules here in a second. Tonight's topics are this day in history, famous Evans, and moles. The animal, not the tags on your skin. There are 3 rounds. In round 1, there are 10 questions, each 1 point. Round 2, there are 5 questions, 2 points each. Round 3, there are 3 questions, 3 points each. Every question is a free-for-all. The first contestant to cover their camera, to reach towards the camera, cover their camera with their hand, will be called on by Jake to answer the question. If you blurt out the answer when it's not your turn, you lose a point. If a contestant answers, they cannot give another answer until all contestants have answered. And the winner is no longer a loser. So there we go. Those are our... Evan, do you have any questions before we get started?
No, I just will say this. Having lived around different places, my knowledge of trivia is pretty fragmented. So unless we're talking about, trivia from Japan and South America, I'm probably not going to do too well. But that's okay. Let's have fun.
Exactly.
Let's have fun.
Everybody is pretty used to Zane winning at this point. Zane is the resident trivia dominator. This year, he is not off to a great start compared to last year, but he's won 5. Alden's won 3. The audience has won twice. Zach has won once. Nick has won once. Steve has won no times. And our guest, we haven't had very many guests, but our guest has won 0 times as well. So
I don't see your name on there, by the way.
I don't participate, so I'm not on it. I'm just the host.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah. In order to answer the question, just reach towards the camera, and I'll call on you.
Okay.
All right, let's do this. Question number 1. On this day in 1979, what disaster took place? Zane.
3 Mile Island.
Gosh, off to a great start, Zane. 3 Mile Island is correct. Goodness gracious, that was so fast. Okay. Question number 2. On this day in 1969, what president died of old age? Zane, goodness gracious, man.
Oh, I thought it was going to be the president that was in office, but obviously that's not true. So, Truman.
Incorrect. Evan.
Eisenhower
is correct. Bravo. Here we go. All right. Question number 3. On this day in 1939, which European Civil War ended? Zane.
The Spanish Civil War.
Spanish Civil War is correct. Bravo. All right. Question number 4. On this day in 1915, Leon Thrasher, a 31-year-old mining engineer, died on a submarine during World War I. What was significant about his death? Zane.
Was it the first death in a submarine?
Incorrect.
In World War I.
Incorrect. Any other guesses? This is a tough one. Just FYI, this is a hard one. I'll repeat the question. On this day in 1915, Leon Thrasher, a 31-year-old mining engineer, died on a submarine during World War I. What was significant about his death?
Really scraping the bottom of the barrel on this one, Jake.
I know. It was a rough day for on this day in history. I will give a hint. I'm going to open it back up to the floor. Zane was on the right track with his first person to die in a submarine. Something about what Zane said was the beginning of the correct answer.
First person to die in a submarine in a war?
No. Good
Okay.
guess. Grumpy
First
says
semen
first case of the bin.
floating.
That is incorrect. Zach?
I was just gonna guess based on Zane's. Let's see. First seaman to die in the war. I don't know. That didn't sound right, but
I'm going to give it to you, Zach. It's the first American to die in World War One.
Oh.
I was gonna go with that maybe, but I'm like, really, I avoid too crazy of things in case it's very wrong. I don't want to look that stupid, so I narrow it down.
Zach, you're already on this show. You already look that stupid. All right. Question number 5. On this day in 1984, the Colts moved to Indianapolis from which city? Zane.
Baltimore.
Man, I can't believe you knew that. Whoops.
My mom is from Cleveland, so she still hates the Ravens to this day. She doesn't even root for the Browns. All the only NFL rooting interest she has is against the Ravens.
That's hilarious. I mean, I get it. I don't really care much for the Ravens either, but I would never just root against them nonstop. All right. Question number 6. On this day in 1930, what major European city was renamed to its present day title? Zane.
St. Petersburg.
Incorrect. Zach.
Istanbul.
Istanbul is correct.
Nice.
Third name started out as Byzantium, went to Constantinople, and then it became Istanbul. All right. Question number 7. On this day in 1854, France and England declared war on what country? Zane, goodness gracious,
Russia.
man. Gosh, how do you know these things so quick?
The Crimean War. The charge of you just gave the wrong person the
Shut-
point, by the way. But it's the charge of the Light Brigade. Into the Valley of Death rode the 300.
I know it. Dude, my
That's
brother
just
and
more
I,
things you know.
my brother and I wrote an entire pilot script based off of that poem because it's so freaking awesome. It never got bought. No one ever decided to buy it, so we're still poor.
Shows set in Russia seem to be
used to-
big right now.
What'd you
Are
say?
you still
Zane?
shopping it around?
We're still shopping it around. Yeah, it's a good script.
Maybe NATO would take you up on it.
I feel like they probably do produce movies. On this day in 1963, which film was released directed by Alfred Hitchcock? Zane.
Vertigo.
Incorrect. Zach.
Rope.
No. Evan.
The Birds.
The Birds is correct. All
Nice.
right.
I just guessed. I didn't know.
That's all I ever do.
Most of trivia is just people guessing other than Zane. It's pretty much him knowing. If you can get there quicker than him and just put out a guess, then sometimes that works.
That's what Alden does. That's
Yeah.
why he beats me so often. I swear it's because he just puts his hand up right when the question starts before he even knows what the question is.
He has strategy, and he actually
You do
knows
that
the
too.
answer a lot of the time. So, all right. Question number 9. On this day in 1910, French innovator Henri Fabre took off in his plane for the first time. What was significant about his plane? Zach.
It was built in France. I don't know.
Incorrect. Zane.
It was the first plane to fly more than a mile.
No, but you're on the right track. Evan, you got a guess?
Yeah, I would guess that. It. I was going to say that it flew, but it was very insignificant amount of distance.
It was a very insignificant amount of distance. That's for sure. I think it was 487 meters is what I read. But that is not the correct answer. Zach, you got a guess?
No, that completely blows my guess. I was gonna guess
It was
something insane.
I know.
So-
It's the first one that have GPS.
Incorrect. Zane.
I think this is wrong because I know that the Wright brothers had a plane crash in which somebody died, but maybe that was after 1910. So I'll say it was the first fatal plane crash.
Incorrect. I'm going to give you all another hint. It is the method in which this plane took off that makes it significant. Zach.
From flat ground.
Incorrect. Zane.
Was it the first seaplane?
Took off from water. It was the first seaplane. Yeah. That's a crazy one. All right. Question number 10. Final question of round 1. On this day in 1584, what famous Russian czar died? Zane.
Ivan the Terrible.
Oh my gosh. It's just ridiculous.
Wow. Man.
It is so impressive. All right. After one round, Zane has 6, Zach and Evan have 2, audience has 0. Sorry, audience, you're not doing well tonight. Second round is in honor of our guest tonight. We're talking about famous Evans. So here we go.
Wow.
Question number 1. Who co-founded Twitter? I'll give you a hint if no one has any idea. Zach.
Jack Dorsey.
No,
I mean-
Evan Smith.
Oh yeah, there's no. I forgot the category. Oops.
Good guess. Good guess, Evan. But that is incorrect. You got it half right. Zane.
Evan Dorsey.
Zach.
Oh, I didn't mean to call in. I don't know another Evan.
Okay. The hint is it's also a brand of bourbon. Zane.
Evan Williams.
Evan Williams is correct.
Oh wow. Gosh.
Bravo. All right. Question number 2. Evan Rachel Wood was the star of what HBO sci-fi series that received wide acclaim? Zach.
Pass. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I was just trying to beat Zane. If the answer wasn't across the universe, I won't. I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's not. Evan Rachel Wood was the star of what HBO sci-fi series that received wide acclaim? Zane.
Just going process of elimination here, I'll say Westworld.
Westworld is correct. I think that's the only big show she's ever. I don't know. I could be wrong. And to be clear, only the first season got wide acclaim. The second and third seasons were utter garbage television.
So I was in the middle of watching it, and then they took it off of Max.
Yeah,
So I've never seen
it was so bad. That, I mean,
No, the first season. I'm specifically talking about the first season. It was because it was like when Warner Brothers was merging with Discovery. There was some weird tax reason why.
it wasn't.
They were acquiring a whole bunch of assets that they didn't want to have to pay tax on, so they had to declare that a bunch of them were like total losses. And they declared that Westworld was a total loss, but I was in the middle of watching the first season, and that just got yanked off of HBO. So that was a little bit sad.
Sad for you because the first season was fantastic. The second 2 were horrendous. They also took it off Max. It wasn't just tax reasons. They didn't want to have to pay royalties to anybody who worked on the show because they were renegotiating a deal with SAG-AFTRA. With royalties for the shows, and it became super expensive to pay people, and so they rebranded it as some other type of show. It was a whole weird political situation. Anyway, question number 3. Evan Tanner won the championship in what alternative sport based here in the U.S.? Zach.
Pickleball.
Incorrect. By alternative sport, I don't mean one of the big 5, basically. Any other sport besides the big 5. Zane.
Oh, well, that opens it up a little bit. I was going to say cornhole, but I'll say I still don't have a good guess. Cornhole.
Incorrect. It is not field hockey, Wicked Kender. Evan, you got a guess?
Croquet.
Incorrect. It's a much bigger sport than what y'all are thinking of. Oh, audience gets it. It is MMA.
Oh,
aka UFC.
Man, Grumpy, you got the right answer before I had the chance to put my hand up and say lawn darts.
It's all the rabbit eye wine he's drinking is making Grumpy smarter.
That's exactly right. Question number 4 of round 2. Evan O'Neill Kane pioneered a self-surgery, first operating on himself. What was the surgery, Zane?
An appendectomy.
Oh my gosh. How did you know that?
Because I don't know if it was this particular guy or if it was somebody else, but I have heard of somebody who is like at the Antarctic research station. They were like the overwinter physician at the research station, and because it's so cold and bad weather throughout the entire winter, like nobody can fly there at all between April and October, and so this guy got appendicitis and because he was the only physician, had to perform an appendectomy on himself, or else he would die.
Wow, that is such.
I was going to say vasectomy, but
that would be the most nerve-wracking self-surgery ever. All right, question number 5. Who played Evan in Evan Almighty? Zach.
Well, I was gonna say Jim Carrey, but he was God, so I'm probably wrong.
No, Jim Carrey was
Steve
Bruce
Garvette.
Almighty.
What's the
Bruce
guy's name?
Almighty. I've never even heard of this other movie.
Evan, you got a guess?
What was the movie called? I'm sorry.
Evan
What's
Almighty.
Was that like Steve? What's his name? Was his first name Steve? At least.
I'm going to give it to you. Steve Carell is the correct
Yeah,
answer.
Steve Carell. I knew it was Steve C with something, but I couldn't remember.
Heck
Okay.
yeah. And the audience came in just after to get it all
Well,
right.
let me just think here. If I get all of these right, then I could beat Zane.
Technically
'Cause I could
speaking,
get possibly 9 points here. So
you are correct.
this is like it's like the fourth quarter. I'm down by 3 touchdowns.
Here's how Bernie could still.
I'm not going to
win.
be Patrick Mahoyne here.
All right, here we go. Round number 3. What is the only continent where you won't find moles in the wild? Zane.
Antarctica.
You know what's funny? I'm not sure, y'all. I'm not sure. Yes, now that I'm thinking about it, you're probably correct, but it's actually Australia.
Boo.
Antarctica, I believe, is actually correct, though. But I think that they're also not indigenous to Australia as well. I don't really know how to score this one.
It's easy.
Well-
Give me 3 points.
Oh, you both guessed it, but you both guessed the
Hold
answer that I
on.
didn't have.
Never mind.
Well, okay. I mean, honestly, if Australia is the answer, well, there would be 2 answers because obviously there are not going to be moles on Antarctica.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
so right.
I mean-
I didn't even think twice about that question because I completely forgot.
It's
Yeah,
easy to forget about.
That's my bad, y'all. You can
I mean,
blame that on me.
I mean, that would be
You know-
weird if there were moles in Antarctica. You think, what are these white moles that bury
Seriously.
themselves into the ice like igloos or something?
I mean, I guess
anyway.
you could, if you thought penguins were moles, then maybe you could get away with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm not giving anyone points for that one. Sorry, Zane.
Oh, man,
Yeah, I
that
know.
means I'm out of the running. Gosh,
Yeah, but-
darn. Well,
It's
we
generally
might as well just end it here. He's won. It's like, it's like the top of the ninth. The home team is ahead, and so
Grumpy says
It's
the
okay.
Yeti moles, which I don't like the sound of that. All right. Question number 2. Which sense is most highly developed in moles to compensate for their poor eyesight?
Yeah.
Zane.
Smell.
Incorrect.
No, hearing,
Oh.
hearing.
Oh, that's incorrect as well. Zach.
Oh, I know. I know.
Zach, you got a guess?
It's
Touch.
It is their sense of touch, particularly in the snout.
I was gonna make a Sixth Sense joke, but then I'm like, well, I might actually be able to get this one. And
Fair enough.
no. I should actually know this because I used to work on a ranch and I had to shoot moles because they were causing a lot of problems. And had to sneak up on them. You had to sneak up when they were building their little mound because I thought it's because they could hear, but now that you mentioned it, yeah, it's because my uncle told me they could actually feel the vibrations from like a cat walking by.
Yep.
And so I should have remembered that. It wasn't the hearing; it was they could sense.
Yeah,
even
they're
a cat.
Crazy little animals. They're wild. They do destroy a whole bunch of stuff. They destroyed half our front yard here in Georgia.
Yeah. That's why we had to shoot them.
Yep. All right. Final question. It's a numbers question, which means everybody gets to guess. Closest one to it gets the points. What is the average lifespan of a mole? I'm going to start with Zane.
3 years.
Okay, Zach.
5 years.
Evan. And you can always guess what other people guess as well. You don't have to.
When I worked on the ranch, it was a matter of weeks because I would shoot them.
Fair enough. All right. The correct answer is 5 years. Zach nailed it on the head.
Nice.
All right. Yeah, but I have a complaint about this game. You got to have a fourth category with 50 points so that somebody can come from behind.
That's true. We got
at the very, the sort of the moonshot, the
right.
Hail Mary.
I'll take that under advisement. But in the meantime, all right, everybody. Thank y'all for playing Libations Trivia. We always love doing that. It's a fun game. Evan, thanks for participating in that, man. That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
By the way, I looked it up, and moles are found in Australia, apparently. They're not in Antarctica, and they're not in South America.
Not in South America? I can't believe that.
Yeah, that sounds weird, but...
That sounds
wow. Did ChatGPT write that one for you?
ChatGPT wrote that one for me.
Yeah. The southern marsupial mole is in Australia. So,
is it indigenous to Australia, or was it brought there?
I don't know, but I don't think that was the question. So
fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Okay. I'll learn something.
Before we move on to the next topic, I have a little bit of news to share. Today, Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison for multi-billion-dollar FTX fraud. We were on the show when this story broke. We've covered it quite a bit. We've wondered what was going to happen because he is very politically connected and has a lot of people that he knows in positions of power. So we didn't think that he would be given a actual trial or an actual conviction. Turns out we were wrong. And he's going to jail for, depending, but he's sentenced to 25 years. I don't know. Zane, you got any initial thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's more than you would think. Like, I know there was I heard some people speculating that it was kind of a setup where in order to bring about more demand for regulation on crypto, where they'd kind of set this guy up to have a big fall and then everybody would get really mad at him. And then that would allow kind of the Fed or the Treasury to enact more crypto regulations. And then, but Bankman-Fried would get away without a lot of punishment because he kind of would have been in on it.
Right.
It kind of seems like this is the death blow to that theory, because unless they had some really serious blackmail on him, I don't think I'd want to get involved in a scheme where I'd be going away for 25 years.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'm glad that there are still good judges out there that can't be bought and paid for by people who are politically connected.
Yeah. And I guess we'll see what happens, because people get out on good behavior all the time and his sentence can be commuted or whatever. But it made me, obviously I don't really like people going to prison for 25 years, but he definitely deserved it because he's just swindled people out of billions of dollars. Which is a wild story. Yeah, Evan, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you know, have you been following that story?
Yeah, well, I think I was kind of hoping for a significant penalty, and I think 25 years is good. Whether I'm sure they'll appeal it, and maybe with good behavior, but I thought that was a good call. And yeah, the thing is I'm sure what something happened with him is that you just start pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope, and before you know it, you're doing this, that, and the other thing, taking money here, taking money there, and you just become sort of almost unaware of. You could, I mean, maybe that's being too generous, but people usually don't start off immediately bad. They start off little by little by little by little, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm guessing that's probably what happened here. He started getting greedy and sloppy, and the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean I didn't want to dwell on this topic for too long, but yeah, I'm very happy with the verdict. I think it's exactly what was needed, because he screwed over a whole bunch of people. And I mean, to be fair, a lot of those people didn't do any research at all into what they were investing in. And if you'd have done any research into it, you'd have realized how crappy that product was. But he still swindled a whole bunch of people and just stole their money and sent a bunch of it into politics, into Ukraine, which came back somehow to the Democratic Party, which is just a wild circulation of money. It's just one of the weirdest stories ever. Before we move on, Grumpy wanted me to announce the Spike Cohen David Hogg debate. Here we go. Spike Cohen versus David Hogg on gun control in America, April 10th at 6 p.m. Eastern at Dartmouth College. The Savannah LP, I believe, has reserved the back room at Coach's Corner. And there's going to be a bunch of live watch parties in different places. I believe we're trying to set one up here in Atlanta. It's going to be an interesting debate, because Spike Cohen is a phenomenal speaker, phenomenal LP member. He was our vice presidential candidate nominee last time around. And for those who don't know, David Hogg was a survivor of which shooting was it down in Florida?
Marjorie Stoneman.
Yeah. And so he's been an anti-gun activist ever since then. Founder of March for Our Lives. And Spike Cohen is very much a libertarian who believes we all have the right to own firearms and be able to defend ourselves. So it's going to be an interesting debate, because David Hogg, normally he's been challenged multiple times publicly online and has yet to actually take one of these kinds of debates. And to go after Spike seems like a pretty big mistake, in my opinion.
He could have just accepted one from some dumb guy, but he chose Spike. He's gonna get demolished.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got to give I always give props to people who actually agree to debate. That being said, he is about to get demolished.
Yeah. I don't know. Evan, do you know either of these guys?
Well, yeah, I've heard of them, but I'm actually looking forward, and I'm hoping that he's going to surprise us. I mean, it looks like a David versus Goliath type of thing, but I really hope that he holds his own, and we can look forward to an interesting debate, with a civil debate, with the ideas being presented. And let's hear things without the emotions. Let's hear let's hear a civil, interesting, fact-based debate, and let the people who listen decide which point of view they prefer.
Heck yeah. And yeah, that's exactly what Spike is known for. He's not going to attack him personally. He's very civil. I interviewed him for my last documentary. The dude's awesome. He very much respects his opponents when it comes to debates, and will have a civil conversation. We're working with his Libertarian Party of Georgia, especially the Free Georgia podcast, is working with his organization on some issues here in Georgia right now as well, which we've been covering in our podcast for the last 3 months or so. So yeah, yeah, if you want to go, which website was that, Zach?
I think that was just Spike's Twitter.
Okay, yeah, if you want to go check it out on Spike's Twitter, you can figure out where the watch parties are going to be if you want to go to a local watch party. Otherwise, I would highly encourage you to tune in because Spike knows his stuff. David is very much an advocate for getting guns off the streets, and it's going to be an interesting debate to say the least.
It's spikecohen.com/gun debate.
spikecohen.com/gun debate. There you go. All right. Do we want to talk about P. Diddy? Is that something we want to talk about tonight?
I really don't have anything to say about him, except that it
probably won't
appears
take
that
long.
he is a very weird guy.
Okay. I the more I look at this topic, the less I want to talk about it because there's not actually any real news happening with it. Let's skip it. We're going to move on to a different topic. What's the next one, Zach?
It is. I'll pull it up. Sorry.
I think it's the rise and fall of the dollar. Yeah, there we go. All right. For those who don't know, dadgummit. Why is that? There we go. The devolution of the dollar. All right. Fun fact: 24% of your wealth has disappeared since 2020. This chart, along with a few others that are extremely similar to it, have been going around Twitter the last few days, around X the last few days, basically showing you the effects of printing 40% of all the dollars ever printed in the year 2020. So this is what happens when you continuously add to the money supply when it is not backed by anything. The value of your currency dwindles. And over the past 4 years, it has dwindled by, according to these charts, 24%. Zane, you got any initial reactions to this?
Well, I think I gave my initial reactions to this, several months ago because still the same. We're still in the same situation that we were a year ago when it was the case that they had printed 25% of all dollars in existence in the past 3 years. And I said that fact to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was like 25%. Now it's 40%. So it's like, okay, guess I just need to add another 15% to the total amount of dollars that were printed in the past 4 years. So, I mean, apart from the fact that it's getting even worse, it's nothing we didn't already know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would just chip in with is that I don't think there are any white hats here. I mean, this it looks like we're concentrating on just the Biden administration here, but I don't think there's no white hats when it comes to this. It's been sickening how we this deficit spending and as printing money, but it's something that both parties have been guilty of and been guilty of for decades. And we have this staggering national debt that, somebody's going to have to deal with, probably our kids and grandkids. And, I think we got to, recognize that it's a problem with both parties and that it's something that we have to, seriously address.
Yeah, every presidential administration since like the 60s has spent more than all of the administrations before them combined. Think about that.
That's so crazy, man. Yeah, it's definitely not just a Biden thing. Like Trump started with printing a massive amount of money in 2020. So, it's definitely not just a Biden thing. He's been printing a crap load as well. But
yeah, and then all these unpaid tax cuts. I mean, who doesn't like the idea of tax cuts? That's great. But if you're going to do tax cuts, you've got to also cut the spending. You can't just, cut taxes and then keep spending like there's the same revenue coming in.
Correct.
Yeah, this is a point that a friend of the show and my friend Suhas makes a lot, which is that the true measurement of the government's burden on society is actually not how much it taxes, it's how much it spends. Because government spending is actually what hoovers up real resources out of everybody else's life. Like, imagine a thought experiment in which the government taxed everybody at 50%, but then just threw all the money in the garbage. I mean, everybody would have 50% fewer pieces of paper, but everyone's real wealth would not be changed. Whereas if the government decides to print up a bunch of money and then spends that on, billion-dollar fighter plane projects and huge social programs and a bunch of other stuff that they like to spend money on, that's what actually causes everybody else to have to consume less and have a lower standard of living.
Correct, because there's more money in the supply. There's more money that's going around in circulation.
I think the other thing that's important, just very briefly, is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. When you print out money, that's got to be tied in the final analysis to something of value. And for example, this free money is going out to buy things like gasoline and like food, and so in other words, it's going to be taxing resources in a real way. This money doesn't just appear and there's no consequences for it. It actually does have to be tied to something real in the world, in our society. It's backed up by something, and that's going to cause prices to increase and fuel inflation.
Absolutely. And this is what I've been saying for very long. I mean, well, we can bring up the second chart too, which shows the currency in circulation and the purchasing power of the dollar, which kind of just shows the exact effect that we've been talking about for basically since the inception of this show. The main thing that I love to talk about and that I love to learn about is economics, specifically Bitcoin, but also the effects of the Federal Reserve. And this is a perfect graph of exactly what happens when you print money that's based on nothing. As more money comes into circulation, the value of all that money goes down over time. This is exactly what has happened over the last, this is just since 1971, but it has been this way since 1913. And you can look at other charts that show very similar things to this, which is why I say, put your money in Bitcoin.
Well, money only has value because it's limited in quantity. And if you make it unlimited money, it's going to have zero value.
You're darn right.
I mean, look at Zimbabwe, or look at Germany after World War I, when they would have 10 trillion francs to buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah. I mean, so many good comments on this. Grumpy says it's ridiculous how much we're spending in just interest on the loans. 100%. Wicked Kender says, when was the last time you bought literally anything for less than $1? That is such a good point. Like, you can't even get like a pack of gum for less than $1 anymore. It's wild. He said,
I think even those souvenir pennies at like tourist stops, you have to put in 4 quarters plus the penny.
Exactly.
And then you get your penny out.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, when I give homeless people $1 now, I feel cheap. I'm like, sorry, man. I wish it was more.
Right.
But
Wicked Kender also says, can we just get a bill that is helicopter dropping pallets of cash? Oh, man. Yeah, I just basically bring this up any chance I get. Whenever I see it trending on X, which obviously it trends for me more than most people because I'm obsessed with Bitcoin. So anything that is related to economics trends on my Twitter far more than other people's. So.
Well, just think if you had a neighbor who was racking up, tens of thousands, hundreds of $1,000s of credit card bills, and said he was going to send the bills to his kids and grandkids. You'd think, God, this guy is just disgusting. And this is exactly what we're doing now. We're using credit cards and we're sending the bill. We're basically going to be sending the bill to our descendants. and that's a terrible thing to do.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. I mean, taxation without representation. Like those people, half the people that are
Yes.
going to have to pay for this haven't even been born yet.
Right? They have no voice in it.
Yeah, it's wild. It's crazy. All right. The next thing we're going to bring up, Zach, I just sent it to you in the private chat. This is crazy. There's been a push for the act of pedophilia and the people known as pedophiles to have a different acronym or a different name called minor attracted persons.
The artist formerly known as pedophile.
The artist formerly known as pedophile. There you go. Well, this one just takes the cake for stupidity. So let's make sure it's unmuted and click play on this thing.
By pedophiles. But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them. But we are responsible for our actions. And we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life. We should accept that pedophilia is a sexual preference.
Yes, from an emotional point of view, I can kind of understand that you would want to eliminate these people from society. However, it doesn't make sense. And that's because we're talking about biology. We're talking about a sexual orientation, something that we simply cannot change. And on top of that, every day, new people are born with the same difficulty. So it's not practical to eliminate these people from society. They haven't done anything wrong.
All right, you can pause it, Zach. All right, so leave it up on screen for a second. Invisible Prepper tweeted or posted this on Instagram. It says pedophiles have done nothing wrong. He then says gaslight the opposition, normalize it, decriminalize it, promote it, celebrate it. And he's obviously not a fan of this. He's just telling you exactly what their playbook is. And this is what happens. Like this is how they get things through. They start out by trying to normalize something that is not okay behavior, that is not good for any society anywhere on earth to have grown humans abusing children. It's absolutely insane that they're trying to make this a sexual preference, a sexual orientation. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't know. It enraged me.
I don't know. You know, I mean, that's like saying Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, he's born the way he is, and we just have to accept that he has a preference for human flesh. I mean, you know, at what point do we, you know, draw the line here?
Yeah, completely agree. That's a very good analogy. Yeah, Zane, what do you got?
So as with some of this stuff, there is, if you look deep enough, a kernel of truth here surrounded by a bunch of madness, which is if we do want to treat this issue with a great amount of humanity for other people, I can accept that there would be people that, for whatever reason, have these attractions, and having them is not the same as acting on them.
Right.
And people that have them we need to make it so that like they can go to therapy and get that worked out, and it's about, you know, it's about like actions, and it's not say obvious, and obviously it would be clear that the actions are completely unacceptable, but to just acknowledge a reality that some people have attractions that are not acceptable, but that they can't really, to some extent, control.
Right.
But the other thing is here, this is obviously the thin end of the wedge, because they're saying now we need to acknowledge this, which I think actually they sort of have a point. But 5 years from now, they're going to come back and say, no, actually, pedophilia is great, and we should just allow them to do whatever they want.
Exactly.
And so obviously that's really bad. But I think that they have a little bit of a point on that issue. But the problem is, again, this is obviously meant to lead to normalization, as you already see with all the pedophilic stuff that people are already doing, all over the place at these like events and bars that are inviting kids to places that they obviously should have no business being.
Yeah.
Well, I think there should be kind of a carrot and stick approach. I mean, if you feel these desires, a person should be able to go and get therapy and do so without having to worry that that information about them is going to be made public. But if they are caught with child pornography, or if they are caught with doing something perverse with a child, then there should be severe consequences. But if they acknowledge the problem and seek help to control it, then they should be given their privacy and given what is needed to help them work through what we can only I can only describe as what I think is an illness, an obvious illness. I just can't put it any other way. I mean, look, I don't have any issues if sexual preference, if two guys want to go and get married or whatever, that makes them happy. That's fine with me. Not that I can understand that, or I'm not oriented in that way, and it's incomprehensible for me, but if that's how they're oriented. But when it comes to kids, that's where, you draw the line. You just draw the line, because the kid is not in a physical state to be doing that sort of thing, nor do they even understand what is being done to them. And it's just, these kids who were abused. I mean, how many of them deal with the scars their whole life? Yep. And it's just, it's unforgivable. And, we got to, I think, have an atmosphere or a system in place where these people who feel these urges are strongly encouraged to get the therapy needed. But if they cross the line, then there are going to be very serious repercussions.
Yeah, I think that's enough said. We do have one more segment before we get to our final little thing of the night. There we go.
I am not fucking drunk.
Well, 19th or blue.
Every pretty girl deserves to go to a ball.
This is everything about it's a clam. I love it.
I gotta be honest with you, I feel like I'm a little bit too drunk to stand up.
On Wiedersehen, asshole.
I'm drunk right now.
All right. So it is time for our drunkard of the week. This week was a shockingly easy choice. Some might criticize it, but we're just going to watch this short little video real quick, and you'll see why. This is our people performing for Kamala Harris down in Puerto Rico as she's coming out of a meeting. She's clapping along. She's loving the music. What she doesn't realize at the time, and her translator is translating this to her right now, is that these people are mocking her and basically trolling her, basically asking her, why did she come here? Why is she in Puerto Rico? Are you going to talk about the tax laws here? Are you going to... the exact lyrics are, we want to know, Kamala, what did you come here for? We want to know, Kamala, what we want to see. If you're going to talk about lost...
We want to be free to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
We want to get loaded.
Yeah.
And we want to have a good time.
So that was drunkard of the week. If you're going to talk about the Lost 60 or about the Fiscal Control Board, basically they were just trolling her repeatedly asking her over and over again, like, are you actually going to do something about what's happening in our country? Are you actually going to do something about what's happening? They mentioned the colony, as in like America colonizing Puerto Rico. So it just was really funny to me to watch her face, like her clapping, and then go to like deadpan nothingness in her face all at once. Really enjoyed that.
Good night, Grumpy.
Oh, good night, Grumpy. Peace out, man. Yeah, this show's going a little later than normal, but thank you everybody for sticking around. Let's see. Wicked says when. Oh, he already said that. My bad. All right. So that was Drunkard of the Week. So for the last few minutes, Evan, each week we just watch about 4 funny videos that I've found online, just to laugh, have a good time, and then we'll
Sounds great.
Then we'll do the wrap up and sign off.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, looking forward to the 4 videos. I mean,
yeah. All right.
Signing off.
First one is about HOAs. Hang on one second. Sorry, let me zoom in a little bit. If you hate your HOA, this is what this guy suggests you do.
If you hate your HOA, you got to get one of these bad boys. Nothing funnier than installing a 70,000 plus capacity bat roost, potentially causing thousands of bats to come into your neighborhood at night. Sure, this might cause the HOA to complain, but legally, they can't do anything about it because bats are federally protected and cannot be removed. I mean, can you imagine if you actually did that? Hey, Karen, check out my bat motel. What's that? You want it down? Too bad. It's a sanctuary.
I just thought that was, I've had, HOAs are like the bane of my personal existence, and I will never live in a place with an HOA again. And I just thought that was such a great way to handle ridiculous people that want to control everybody.
Unfortunately, I don't think bats are that cooperative. Like, you can put up a bat house and they may or may not move into it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We wanted to put some up because they're great for mosquitoes. So like here in Georgia, they'd be awesome, but you have no control over whether or not a bat decides to roost in your bat cave. Like,
yeah, I put up a bat house and it literally rotted and fell down before a single bat looked at it. But we still have plenty of bats here. They just live somewhere else.
Wicked Kender says in Georgia, that would be a community service to destroy mosquitoes. You're darn right, Wicked Kender. All right. This is the second one. This is a local, I think it's in England, local council member coming to someone's house while they're not home.
Hello. How you doing? Hello. Good. Thomas from Galway County Council.
That's Ireland.
Okay. We're just going on here, just checking for our dog licenses. Do you have any dogs? Stop with that. Hey, joking me? No. Go on and go and do something useful. Don't be going along there wasting time and wasting shoe leather. Have you nothing else for doing now? Is that a yes or a no? Have you nothing else for doing? And 2 weeks going around to check that? Yes. Wow. Just go in and get a life for yourself. Get a proper job. Okay, thank you. Bye.
So yeah, this guy's going around with his partner at making sure people have dog licenses for dogs that they have in their home. Yeah.
If they actually had dogs, the dogs would be going nuts. You would not be able to hear anything except them barking while he told them to get alive.
Wicked Kender, LOL, do something useful. Agreed. All right. Anybody seen the latest Dune movie?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this isn't going to hit home with anybody. Whatever. Basically, we have a frog riding a snake. Which, for those who don't know, in Dune, the humans ride these giant sandworms. So, man, that went right over everybody's head. Whatever.
That is
Well,
a toad,
actually,
Fred.
I haven't seen it, but I knew there were giant worms, and
There we
I
go.
had a feeling it had something to do with that. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go.
It's
Evan,
good.
thank you for saving me.
Dune is worth a watch. I'm not a huge movie guy, but I really enjoyed it.
Dude, Dune 2 is so good.
I need to see it.
I'd say Dune 2 is better than 1, actually, and that's normally not the case. All right, we're gonna end this sequence on Ryan Long comedy, because why not? He's always hysterical. So here we go.
University professor Bethany Latique has claimed that marriage promotes white supremacy, to which local resident Braden Smith responded, "Finally, someone said it. I've been trying to explain how problematic marriage is to my girlfriend for 17 years, and that by tying that knot, we might as well be tying the knot on our Grand Wizard outfits."
Smith continued, "As much as I would love to take a vow to only smash one woman for eternity, it's just way too racist. You heard what the professor said. I could never do that to black people."
Bar owner Jamal Green responded by saying, "I knew something about holding an expensive ceremony with this woman I've only been with for 12 years was not sitting right with me. But now I realize it's because of racism," before asking the news team how much enrolling his wife in that lecture might run him.
36-year-old firefighter Jose Lopez is quoted as saying, "I see no difference between wedding vows and screaming the N-word," and states that he also felt there might be something white supremacist about dinner with the in-laws, and asked if that professor abroad could take a look into that as well.
University.
So that's Ryan Long. He's a comedian. He's been on some podcasts recently, like Tim Pool, but he's got his own channel. Dude's hilarious. Does very quick-witted stand-up comedy, and puts out a ton of videos. So if you want to give him a follow, it's Ryan Long Comedy on Instagram and Twitter. It's
And
good.
shout out to the other guy. That's Danny Polishuk. He's hilarious too.
Yep.
And he's bringing back call-in shows. So
there we go. Well, Evan, really appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me. I've totally enjoyed it. A very interesting conversation. I've enjoyed hearing your different points of view. It's been an honor and a real pleasure.
Heck yeah.
I'm really happy that you invited me to participate.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, do you want to talk about a little bit about the Solutions Party and what you're trying to do with it? And I'll bring up y'all's website real quick.
Yeah, basically, these are ideas that I've formulated over the years, seeing government and politicians from different points of view, different countries. But the first thing that comes to mind is, Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution, government is the problem. And I would just refine that a little bit and say the problem are politicians. Our politicians are the source of our problems. And why are they the source of our problems? Because they get addicted to power and they don't want to give it up, and that becomes the priority. And do we really want to elect people whose priority is just staying in office and advancing partisan interests? Or do we want to have our politicians actually concentrating on doing their job and getting things done? And so that's the first thing. But real reform it's the problems that plague our country are pretty intertwined. And so I think that I've tried to propose a range of solutions. For example, sunsetting political parties. So, George Washington said that political parties are a very dangerous thing. And that's proven to be true, because we've got basically two mindless political tribes now fighting each other. And it's completely counterproductive. And it's greatly weakening what our democracy is. Our democracy, I've seen communism. I've lived in a communist country. We ought to be cleaning their clocks when it comes to China, because we have diversity of thought. They don't. So why aren't we doing it? Is because we have this mindless tribalism and this brainless partisanship, and these politicians who just have other priorities rather than serving the country. So this is basically the inspiration. So I tried to present a bunch of different ideas to reform our judiciary, to make our media reliable again, and to make our elections more robust. So it's meant to be a fairly comprehensive source or set of ideas. The idea right now is just getting it started. I'm hoping to get more people interested in these ideas. And this is just the train's leaving the station now. So, and this is like one of the first steps. It's just talking with others and getting other people's points of view and exchanging ideas. But let's make our elections about ideas, not about emotions and tribalism.
There we go. I love it. Yeah. If you want to go check out his stuff, I just took down the website. What was it? Solutionsparty.org. There we go.
Yes. And if you're interested, send me an email and let's start working together and let's make some changes.
Awesome. Anything to try to fix what we currently have, I'm on board with.
Yeah. I mean, it just becomes intolerable. It
really is.
So,
all right, y'all. Well, keep in mind, this is the last week to watch this on Libertarian Party of Georgia pages. Starting next week, it will be on Peaceful Sea Productions and Liberty Libations, Rumble, and Twitter. It'll also be, I believe, on our Facebook and YouTube as well. So make sure you go subscribe. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Evan, again, thank you for tuning in. Stick around after the credits and we'll chat for a minute.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Well, we'll make sure you tune in to Free Georgia Podcast on Monday night at 8 p.m. and come back every Thursday night for more Liberty Libations. We'll see y'all next week.